message to the billionaire class: you can't have it all.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Chris Robinson. This is The Evolution of Now. I am joined by my co-host, Jordan. Jordan, how you doing?
Get it right.
Yeah.
I'm good. Refreshed, but not for long, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, you had this little trip last week. By the way, the show had a trip of its own last week. We kind of didn't have a show.
Right.
But we were going to actually have a show with me and Michael, but we had some technical difficulties, so we kind of just scrapped it. Unfortunately,
right. You just ghosted. You just ghosted our audience.
I ghosted the audience. I'm sorry, guys. I ghosted you. I am the worst. Next time, I swear, I will try and do at least a little recording to tell you guys what's going on. I meant to do it this time around too, and I didn't do it. I ghosted. Sad. Very sad.
You at least could have remembered my birthday, Dad. Oh, sorry.
Wait. Wait, what? Is this some reverse Darth Vader thing going on here? Am I your father and you're just now telling me this? What? What the hell is this, Jordan?
Oh, sorry. Just correlating the abandonment of our show with other things. Carry on.
But anyway, you abandoned the show yourself. Just saying. You went over to Iceland for the week last week.
Boy, my arms are tired.
Oh, you're so funny. But anyway.
You should have had an effect for that.
Oh yeah, I probably should have. I'm terrible with the the soundboard. I always have it just out of reach almost. You
saying that completely makes me understand why you actually kind of do need a tablet in order to just conveniently touch the clip that you want to play.
Yeah, just give it a little touch once in a while. I mean, it's good, and it'll work. Okay. but anyway,
we should just name this episode "Conveniently Give It a Little Touch."
Wow. By the way, we're talking about Iceland this week,
right?
So I'm interested to hear about your trip to Iceland, and then we're actually going to cite some facts about maybe some comparisons between Iceland and the United States. So, how was your trip? How did things go? How was the ice wall that we talked about the last episode?
I'm not allowed to tell you. Wait, what was that?
What?
Oh, they told me I can't say anything. I'm not.
Damn it!
Sorry. This may
the Flat Earth Society got you. God damn it!
This may be a short episode.
Are they at the door right now? Are they just I don't know.
What was that? Wait, no, they're not here.
No? Okay. Did they tell you to say that, or is this of your own volition? Anyway, let's move on to the train wreck of a joke. But anyway,
I was like, how can we continue to?
Let's just segue out of that by just saying that was a disaster. But
it started off strong.
Yeah.
But
yeah, how was it?
Anyway, it was a really great experience. Of course, initially Iceland wasn't necessarily on my list of destinations to visit, but my fiance though happened to want to go for about over a decade, and it starts with what kind of touchdown in the United States, which is the influence Icelandic artists had on music, and so her favorite artist is Sigur Rós, which is Icelandic, and from that was the launching pad and going into learning more about the natural beauty of the country, and so because of that, I started to do a little bit more research into it, and it seemed like a very worthy destination. And yeah, just on the moment of getting on that plane from Newark airport, we went on WOW, which is the name of the air,
the airline.
I guess the airline, yeah, right. And of course there are the staff, these that are Icelandic, the stewardesses, and they couldn't be kinder. And that moment right there was such a great, just like they put their best foot forward there, because it completely just it was a great representation of what to expect when we actually landed in Iceland, which is just like kindness in its people, and just like kindness in its natural surroundings. It was just like such a beautiful sight to behold. And of course, I met while out there. I was there for a week, and I met a lot of tourists there, and many, particularly American, and just talking about the reasoning for wanting to go here, and many did just cite the of course the beauty of it, but also just the people and the society, just kind of being something that we aren't familiar with here in the States. Yeah. And so yeah, of course, I mean, I can get into the details about what waterfall we seen, and what volcano we visited, or we did the Golden Circle, which is pretty like standard for if you want to visit Iceland. It's like the thing you just kind of do.
The Golden Circle, I think, is like that main road that goes all the way around the island, right?
Right. I mean, it's an imperfect circle, but in more or less. And yeah, it pretty much it's a route to witness all of these very specific landmarks in Iceland that there's from the historical to just the damn right beautiful. It's really a cool experience. But one thing that's really interesting that I didn't necessarily expect. I mean, I knew it was coming, but I didn't expect to be such a hallmark of my experience there, which was actually the water. Now, reading a couple some statistics in preparation to this episode, I've seen how apparently, specifically, the American West has a very bad reputation for water quality, and it's particularly something that that I think, because of American exceptionalism, we are thought to believe we don't have to worry about. And there was actually I want to see if I actually got that one.
But Jordan,
one thing
we're number one. Jordan,
we're just number one in everything.
Exactly.
So actually, I actually do have it here, and so we see that Iceland has its issues as well, but apparently it has over 90% of its water is safe and without any pollutants and polluted things kind of floating in it.
Yeah. So, like, to put it into context for people that might not live in the United States, and especially not living in, like, I don't know, say New Jersey.
Right.
Most places in America, you cannot really drink the tap water without it being filtered first, because it's very iffy, the water in most places in this country.
And I actually have a statistic right here. It shows that it's from the nationmaster.com, which is like, of course, you showed me this, Chris, a cool website where you can actually, it's like a comparative study.
Did I?
Yeah, you did. You did something good.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Exactly. I don't always say it. That's why. But
I don't know.
But yeah, it's a cool little versus website where you can put different countries up one another just to see how they do in comparison. And in terms of clean water, Iceland apparently ranked number one, having 93.33% of clean water in all of Iceland. And in fact, that's pretty amazing. Ranked number one, and I knew it was good, but I didn't know it was the best. Yeah. And also, America actually is ranking 22nd on that list, having only a slight majority of it being clean. So about 54.13% of American water is clean. And
that's not great.
Yeah, that's problematic. I mean, if that's really bad. And also just to expand on it a tiny little bit. This is the last push in here. So the contributing factors for these statistics for Iceland not being 100% is because of pollution derived from fertilizer runoff and inadequate wastewater treatment. And for America, it's like it's a damn like novel. It's air pollution resulting in, this is verbatim, air pollution resulting in acid rain in both the U.S. and Canada, and also U.S. being the largest emitter of carbon dioxide, of course, from burning fossil fuels, and water pollution derived from runoff of pesticides and fertilizers. So, and it does say, but like I said before, it affects much of the western part of America. So yeah, that's fucked up, man. Like,
yeah,
that's it. Wow,
it's very, very interesting and depressing. But it's just we have. It is also maybe a factor that our nation is so big as well. So, I mean, of course, there's going to be areas that are worse than others, whereas Iceland is a very small nation, and up in the coldest environments on the planet up there, and that sort of can help keep things a little bit cleaner, I would assume, as well in itself. But I don't know. I mean, I could be completely wrong on that. I'm just pulling things out of my ass. But,
And guess what? It stinks. Because...
Wow.
Because, sorry. But... but, I mean, not entirely. I do think everything does play a factor. Everything's interconnected. So, I mean, you can just throw out anything. You could say, people don't... I don't know. Something completely asinine and just be like, yeah, that's a contributing factor. Because kind of everything is in a way. But I do think a big part of it does happen to be our fossil fuel consumption here, and how it did point out there's acid rain in fucking America. It's just so wild, and of course it is as a result of our fossil fuel burning, which is a big problem.
Yeah, pollution, not a good thing. Not good. And we do a lot of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, we do. So I guess it's moving on. So that was definitely surprising, just kind of walking up to a random waterfall and going, hey, I'm thirsty, and just plunging your face into it.
People in this country would probably look at you very strangely for a while if you did that. Whereas they're like, whatever. There's tourists.
Exactly. Tourists. Get overly too excited. But
a little bit.
So yeah. And so yeah, that was definitely remarkable and I think interesting to note, because I know many people who do go to Iceland don't necessarily make that case about it being an actual thing, a cool memory to take back home. But yeah, it's true. And also very interesting is I wanted to dig a little deeper into why Icelandic people they're not chipper. That's the wrong word for it. It's not like the South, which is like people aren't being needlessly hospitable just for the sake of being hospitable. It's just like people, at least in my experience over there, it hasn't been for very long, but from what I saw, it's just like people respect the fact that you exist in that space, in the same space they inhabit. And
that's weird.
So it's not necessarily being like, walking down the street and being like, how you doing? Oh, happy you're having a good one, Mr. Johnson. It's just more
Might
like,
depend on the town on that one.
yeah, true. But everyone's not walking around calling you baby. But
Oh, that's good.
like the American South. But no, that's a generality. But but yeah, and so yeah, it was very strange having it actually live up to the expectation that people ascribe to Iceland in different one of the a notable index of statistics that comes out, and I don't believe it's a yearly basis, but it's often enough that kind of that does a study on these kind of things, and Iceland does consistently top the list of the happiness nations in the world. In conjunction with with a handful of other their Nordic cousins, but yeah. So I really wanted to look into like what is contributing factor in this, and really, I guess it's, of course, as in many things, it's a compilation of reasons, and of course one of them being life expectancy in Iceland.
Yeah.
Which is, it's America actually doesn't do bad on that list, except Iceland does a slight bit better. So, for instance, so the life expectancy for men, and this is from a 2015 study, shows them being 80.2 years old, living up to 80.2 years old, which happens to be the highest in all of Europe, and which is very notable. And for women, it happens to be 83 years old, and that happens to be it's up the top. It's the sixth longest life expectancy of all of Europe, which is still high. And of course, the infant mortality rate in Iceland, which happens to be the lowest in Europe, and once again, it's from 2015, and it shows it's which happens to be 1.9 out of 1,000 live births, and on average of the European Union is 4.0. So yeah, that's pretty. And in comparison to the U.S., the U.S. is 5.87 per 1,000 births, per 1,000 live births. So yeah, that's also a cool thing,
It's interesting to know, at least.
Yeah, it is. It's a cool little fact to have in your pocket. And just like by what I've been reading, apparently growing old in Iceland is like is a phenomena that a lot of people, or in articles from what I've been seeing, like to put a note on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose. Now, there's a lot of stats, especially like on that website Nation Master, about comparisons between the United States and Iceland. Right here, it shows that their population in the United States here is 316.67 million people, and the population of Iceland is 315,281 people. That is huge. And it shows here that the United States has 1,004 times more people than Iceland. And I mean, obviously, we're a much bigger country. It also says here that Iceland is actually slightly smaller than Kentucky, and the United States is about half the size of Russia, and Russia's pretty big. So.
Yeah, and apparently you can drive from one side of the island to the other, speaking of Iceland, in 12 to 14 hours.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very compact. And but yeah, I mean, of course, that contributes. I'm sure that contributes to the feeling of being in Iceland, just kind of having a more personalized experience. It's sort of kind of like being in a lecture hall in comparison to like comparison to like I guess a tutoring experience, or is this kind of like 101?
Yeah.
I guess it's like just yeah, and I think that brings out a sense of a more communal experience over there, which I've actually been seeing a lot. And I've been reading things particularly written by Icelanders, so like different articles and things. And I did see how they do have they're more reliant on one another because of their experiences in more harsh seasons, like the winter when it's very treacherous, when it can get treacherous at times. And it's and it was also really cool, a really cool statistics on that site about the crime rate, right? Or the lack thereof, which is actually pretty funny. Do you actually have that, Chris?
Yeah, I have it right in front of me here. Did you want me to? The murder rate is pretty interesting, to say the least. So
talk about absolutes.
Yeah, so
fucking insane.
Here in the United States, according to this, there were, I guess, the average rate per year is about like 12,996 murders per year, I believe is what this means.
I believe, yeah.
And Iceland, 1. So that's pretty amazing. They average 1 murder a year comparatively. So that's, in comparison, United States has 12,996 times more murders than Iceland. So, which is pretty interesting.
That is pretty interesting, and I think you'll get a better statistic once you start, or get a better sense of how egregious that is once you put America against countries that are just about to have a population similar. Once again, like we are in terms of the murder rate and incarceration rate amongst the highest in industrialized nations, and that's really sad. Except I'm cool. Speaking of like those statistics, is something else that I noticed while being in Iceland, which is the sense of safety you get when you're there. It's more than just some percentages on an index. It's actually something you can feel when you're in that space, which is really bizarre, especially coming from America when you constantly do have that threat looming over you. And really, it doesn't matter who you are. You living in a constant state of fear, especially when gun violence in this country is rampant. And which is really interesting is how in Iceland you can personally carry a firearm with you, and apparently a majority of people in Iceland do. But I guess, but I'm sure maybe amongst other things, one thing that I can really think of is the culture. I'm sure the culture around violence may be slightly different.
Potentially. It could also be, like we've been saying, it could also be a very much a factor of the population size. Since they only have 300,000 something people that live there, there's just not going to be that many murders. So it's just sort of correlates, although even if you account for the size difference, we still do at least 10 times more than even if they were doing the same. Right.
And I think a good correlation we can do is maybe, I wish I was able to do this, but is comparing Iceland to individual states in America. Maybe, I mean, even at that rate, of course, America will exceed in population, but it will still give you a better sense of just like how maybe population size doesn't necessarily correlate to. Maybe that's not necessarily the only factor in maybe some of the great points that Iceland has.
Yeah. Although there is one thing on here about crime that isn't all that great for Iceland, and there is one thing on here, the stats, that is the rape rate.
Right.
according to this, I believe this is I guess like per capita type of a deal or something like that. There are 27.3, I guess, rapes per capita or something here. I would assume it doesn't really detail it well enough.
Right.
But so we have 27.3 here, and they have 24.7 there. So that's not great. That's for sure.
It's not. Yeah, definitely. And I actually knew going into Iceland that was a problem, because I've read it. I've read it somewhere else prior, and it just, to me, it's more of it's a huge issue that needs to be resolved in quick. But it's also an anecdote about how just about how sexism is like universal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and of course, like, I am very presumptuous in the idea that majority of these rapes are probably happening to women, but I'm positive, like, there's no doubt in my mind that is the case over in Iceland, just like it is around the rest of the world.
Yeah. Just to go back on that just for a second, the definition on the website is here. It says that number is the number of rape incidents per 100,000 citizens in different countries. Figures do not take into account rape incidents that go unreported to the police.
Right.
So, yeah. So it is a factor of like 100,000 to 100,000. So there is proportional accuracy there.
Right.
So that is interesting that the rape rate is still pretty bad there, even though ours seems to be worse.
Right. Still, in terms of sheer number,
shockingly, in America.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, but yeah, that's definitely a concern, no matter where you go, which is really unfortunate. But I think in terms of definitely in terms of the homicide or the murder rate, like you brought up, I noticed like children as young as 10 years old walking without adult supervision in the dead of night with like a backpack on, because I think in Reykjavik is a small city. Reykjavik is the city of Iceland. I mean, it's not the only city, but it's the most notable. It's the capital of Iceland. So I think within Reykjavik, you do, like, being in Iceland, you already have a very communal society. But then there's subdivisions, and which makes it even more of a communal experience because it makes it even smaller, more compact. So I'm sure I've been just walking around on a daily basis. I've noticed people over and over and over again, and it got to the point where you just kind of have to say hi because you just it'll be awkward at that point. Yeah, right, exactly. Which is a very cool experience.
Yeah.
Small town feel.
So going back to that murder rate just for a second too, I found the definition here for that. The murder rate is intentional homicide, number and rate per 100,000 people population. So it's not just 12,996 people being murdered in America every year. It's a lot more than that.
Damn. Wow.
So yeah, if you do the math, 100,000, that's 12,000 people per 100,000. We have 300 something million people living here. That's a lot of murders per year in this country. That's insanity.
Damn right depressing, wow.
So I guess in terms of Iceland, then, that could possibly then be total about like maybe 3 murders per year.
Right. And actually, well, I think more, I've been reading things that are more specific about the number, and they say consistently it is about 1 per year, except crazy, but ridiculously enough, that you said 3, because Iceland this year have had 3 homicides or 3 murders take place.
And that's probably where they got the number. Maybe it's a accurate number, or I don't know if this is actual averages. It could just be like the current data then, you know?
That is true. That is very true. So yeah, but yeah, so I think that definitely contributes to just the overall just mood of the country of being kind of calm. But don't take it calmness as just like, there isn't any upheaval in Iceland. Of course, there's political upheaval. Of course, people demonstrate out there just like they do over here. There's environmental advocacy groups just like they have here. The only difference is of course, one of the huge industry within Iceland is the aluminum industry, and very recently they've been altering the natural landscape in order to expand, and it comes at a cost because the process of smelting to produce aluminum, it does emit harmful gases into our atmosphere, which can contribute to global warming. Yeah. So that's been a big issue, and apparently, from what I've been reading, a majority of Icelanders overwhelmingly are against big industrialization like that. Except, of course, that doesn't stop the government from monetizing on this huge industry for them.
They've had their fair share of political issues over there. One thing was back in 2001, they actually deregulated their financial industry, which I don't know if you guys know this, but we had a recession here in the United States in 2007, 2008. And what you might not know is Iceland actually had one of their own over there, too. And I think theirs happened a little bit earlier than the United States' recession happened. And so what had happened at that point was, the more corporatist party was in control. They deregulated the financial industry, and the financial industry exploded in, what they were able to do and the money they were able to make, and it led swiftly to a crash.
Surprise!
Weird. It's weird. It's almost as if regulation is actually important for these kinds of things.
I just love how government gets amnesia when it comes to big banks.
Well, they're paid to. That's the problem,
Exactly.
And to talk about more modern now, though, that very same party, which party was it? I don't have it in front of me right off the bat. But it was their more, I guess, conservative-leaning party. Has sizable amounts of influence in the country right now. Guess what they're trying to privatize now?
Oh God!
Healthcare.
Yep.
So, and to talk about their healthcare system for a little bit, Iceland has a very socialized healthcare system. The kind of scary healthcare system that, the Republicans would try and fearmonger you away from.
Yeah.
Now, they have such cheaper prices. There's a article here from this website that you gave me. Mm-hmm. I believe it's Reykjavik Grapevine is the place's name. It's grapevine.is.
Mm-hmm. Which Iceland out there is spelled with an S, so IS.
Yeah, weirdos. Mm-hmm. But anyway, there's this article here that you posted, which is Healthcare in Iceland versus the U.S. We've got it so good. She's talking about Iceland, of course.
Why would you talk about it?
She goes into her history here. She actually left the United States. She used to be a United States citizen, but she left the United States for Iceland during the term of George W. Bush. And she was thinking there... I wanted to read this one paragraph here. Mm-hmm. she was talking about like how the decision was really horrible and it was tough to make the leap to leave the country where her family and friends are all from and everything to this other place. But then she says, I powered through though, and I'm still here. Throughout the transition period, when in doubt or discouraged, one mantra in particular proved especially helpful. I would repeat to myself over and over, you are choosing to live in a place that used tax money to pay for education and healthcare, not killing people. It felt good. Back in the U.S., I had left behind George W. Bush, basically, was still in charge. Like many, I had actually followed through on all of those threats to jump ship if the country re-elects that backwards, gun-loving, woman-hating, warmongering, beady-eyed ignoramus. Oh, if only she had seen today, and the president that we have today. She probably would have lost her shit even worse. Because, not for nothing, but George W. Bush comparative to Donald Trump, on the terms of women-hating, warmongering, and beady-eyed ignoramus, and being backwards, there's literally no comparison. It's sort of like, you almost have like a dynamic like the Globetrotters versus, what was it, the Generals? You know? In this instance, George W. is the Generals, obviously, and Donald Trump is kind of the Globetrotters of sexist, warmongering, ignoramus assholes. So, you know, it works out, right?
Yeah, I think that's one way to put it.
It's one way to put it, at least, yeah.
Yeah, George Bush was just practice. No, but yeah, it's you know,
Sarah Palin was the halftime show, and then oh god,
oh man. So I think, and she even goes into a little bit about how she giving birth in Iceland required nothing. You know, she didn't have to reimburse for anything because there was nothing to reimburse. It's just like, you know, it's a socialized system. It's you it's no frills. You go with you're there for what you went there for, and you leave without any of the hassle. And she even went into detail about how she needed extensive I guess hospital stay and diagnostic because of her pregnancy. And once again, it was just like such a seamless experience that cost absolutely nothing out of pocket. You know, of course they pay taxes, and they pay a very high tax for their health and their education, but it's one that, at least cited by her, is worth the expense. Yeah. And I'm sure, and I think that's something that I think in my lifetime, maybe within our lifetimes, but at least for the foreseeable future, we could never understand. We can never understand the idea of yes, you will have higher taxes, except it's going towards such a worthy cause that you are going to be able to utilize tenfold. It's just because in terms of, as far as we know, in terms of things that we bankroll, that we see returns from on a constant basis, there's our public school system, and that's something that's very obvious. But there's other things here and there, but I think that's one of the most prevalent ones that everyone kind of notices head on. And even then, it's that needs some fixing as well. But even then, within education, we don't even take pride in the fact that that is something that we contribute to, and because the quality isn't there, maybe. But yeah, just the concept of being proud of being able to contribute into a system that everyone could be a part of is something that I can't even fathom. Yeah.
I also wanted to read another portion of her thing here. She actually lays out the numbers on how much it costs here versus there in some instances, which I found quite interesting. She starts here by saying, when describing Iceland's healthcare system to Americans, there are a few examples I find particularly useful. For instance, the parking ticket I found on my car the day after my son was born was more expensive than his delivery and our overnight stay in the hospital.
That's pretty funny.
According to the International Federation of Health Plans Comparative Price Report in 2012, total hospital and physician cost for a normal delivery in the U.S. typically ranges from $7,000 to $16,000. That's a typical vaginal birth with no complications. As soon as your body starts doing the wrong thing, requiring more intense medical attention, the price tag on your bundle of joy shoots up even higher. The same 2012 report indicates that C-sections range from $10,000 to $26,000, where comparative Iceland kroners, which is the currency there, is 1.3 to 3.44 million kronas. So I giggled and paid my parking ticket and took my son home. Then we got a home visit from the midwife over the next several days, free of charge, because, Scandinavia.
And I would like to go over that the amount of currency that you just read.
Yeah.
That actually comes up to about, you said how much? What was that again?
It said $10,000 to $26,000, which is equivalent to 1.3 to 3.4 million Iceland kronas.
Okay. And that was for the parking ticket?
For a C-section in America.
Oh, the C-section. Right. Okay.
Sorry.
Right. No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, that's reality. That's real. And and that's, and I'm surprised, like, how in America, when we talk about healthcare, it does get people fired up, but not as fired up as you expect as it should, because healthcare being one of the number one reasons for debt and bankruptcy in America, only probably second to, say, education.
It's actually number one. It is the number one reason that people go bankrupt in this country. Right.
I'm sorry. Yeah. What I meant to say is education comes second. At least. Yeah. No, you are absolutely right. Yes. Which is absolutely, that is devastating. And I think the fact that we are in America right now, it just seems so just like second nature. Yeah. But can you just imagine being in a socialized country and looking here?
Yeah, they can't understand it. How can you possibly have a country where people go bankrupt over going to the doctors?
Yes.
That's insanity.
It's like, over your health, your natural well-being. It only makes sense. Like, it only makes sense for healthcare to be socialized. I feel like that's the only way to for a system like that to exist, because essentially privatizing it it's when it's faced just saying, if you have the money, then you're healthy. If you don't, then too bad. It's already putting like a paywall behind how on your health, on your life. It's so blatant. It's like so maniacal when you really think about it. It's like so damn evil. It's craven. There's a paywall on your life. Not even like the enjoyment of your life. Not even like consumerism. Like the simple act of breathing. There is a paywall on that in America. That is some fucked up shit, man.
Yeah, and she talks about the dynamic of free market seeping into healthcare, and she says it pretty well here, I think, actually. She says, and privatization in healthcare is a big problem, because while free market competition does an excellent job of determining things like how many size 39 blue high heel shoes a store should stock and at what price, it does a total shit job of providing healthcare efficiency. The evidence speaks for itself. If in doubt, turn your gaze westward towards your mother or my motherland, which is America. So we are the ultimate free market when it comes to healthcare, at the least right now, and our prices are astronomical, like we've already said. It can cost you $10,000 for a normal birth here, whereas it costs less than a parking ticket over there.
Right. And I think the idea of a privatized healthcare system around industrialized nation is a concern just kind of looming, kind of like fixed, above everyone, because even though like maybe there's not necessarily a active push to make that happen, it's still a valid concern because of how lucrative we see, because how lucrative that industry is, and how much governments love corporations. So it's almost as if it's shaky ground. It's very unstable because it could change in the blink of an eye depending on who you have sitting in office.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like like she was saying, that's like it's a concern for people in Iceland and in other places around the world. I remember we were talking to Michael and specifically about the election at the time in Britain he was talking about how there are some politicians peddling that agenda, and how it may not necessarily have, cultivated enough steam, except it's still worthy enough for Michael to even bring up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I could basically read this entire article to you guys, and it's really, really great. There's so many parts of it that I think are just so important, and I'm going to link it in the description of this podcast. But there's another part here that I wanted to bring up. She talks about their taxes slightly here, but within regards to their socialized healthcare system. And then she goes on after that a little bit to talk about the current trend that can be very disturbing that I actually already mentioned earlier. But this is a little bit long, but I think it's really, really important to talk about. We pay these costs, sure. Taxes are really high. But with them, we buy peace of mind. Everyone gets sick at some point in their lifetime. And everyone benefits from living in a community where you know that if your neighbor gets really ill, she won't have to sell her apartment to pay her medical bills. Each month, I pay into a system because someday I know I am going to need it. My family members, friends, neighbors, random strangers, even you, yes you, will need it too. Getting sick is part and parcel with the whole having a body thing. It gets infected with a thing here, sometimes breaks there, bing, bang, scrape, cancer, migraine, stroke, pneumonia, tonsils. It is inevitable, which is absolutely true. We all get sick, guys. Everyone gets sick. I don't care how young you are, you're going to get sick at some point. If you haven't had any real massive health scares, count yourself lucky. But it'll eventually catch up with you. It always, always does. Mm-hmm.
We heed the condition of our vehicles more than we do our own bodies. Many of us, and that's really sad, because it really puts things in perspective in terms of what we deem important, and what our society and our government does. And once again, a car is a product. Our bodies is essentially it's an organic, piece of intelligence that you can't replace. Yeah. And
without a car, you're not driving anywhere. But without a body, you're not doing anything because you're dead. You're not living.
Right.
So
simple as that.
Yeah.
But so yeah, actually, just to kind of bring things just to touch on some American news just for 1 second. The recent, once again, a third or probably fourth attempt of the Republican healthcare plan has failed in the Senate.
Has it completely failed?
It completely failed. John McCain has casted a vote against it. Yep.
But so I know I saw McCain voted against it, which is great. I'm really, really glad that he did that. But I wasn't sure that it was completely dead then at that point.
I believe it is dead, and I believe he cast the deciding vote once again.
Well, that's good. At least,
yeah, it is. It is. And he said, and he actually put out a statement on social media saying he can't, in good conscience, vote for a bill that's going to take so much away from people. And yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, and it's a shame because we're talking about a healthcare system right now that's not even like, it's nothing to be proud of. It's not even like bringing healthcare to the majority of to even half of the citizens of this country. But so yeah, we're defending a milquetoast like system, and we're happy for. And unfortunately, because of perspective or because of maybe Stockholm syndrome, we're happy that we get to keep this system a little while longer. I guess in comparison to absolutely nothing. But
it seems like what Republicans really want to do is throw the baby out with the bathwater in a lot of ways. They're trying. Like, this is the problem. Like, there are some problems with Obamacare. The Affordable Care Act wasn't perfect. There were a lot of bad things in it, and I really wish they would have kept the public option in the bill. That would have been pretty crucial, I think. But they didn't, and it got taken out, and that sucks. But, what the Republicans want to do is just repeal the entire thing. The good and the bad gone. And then give us this really BS system that's just in every way inferior. So that's Republicans for you, though, in this country. They're just really ham-handed when it comes to these things, and it's just nefarious and disgusting at the same time.
Absolutely. And just to veer from one socialized system to the next, actually, that is education, of course. I mean, that comes right under healthcare. Very close though. In terms of importance, and yeah, Iceland. I actually didn't know this while I was there, and I only found out while researching for the show, which is Iceland has a socialized university education. So the only thing you pay for is actually an annual registration fee, which, from what I've seen, can range from around close to $200 to which the highest rates that I've seen happens to be in the University of Iceland, which is around probably close to $700. But even with that, as an annual fee, and I'm not exactly sure the timeline of college education there, whether or not it's 2 or 4 years. But either way, you can. I can pretty sure bet on it's not going to come nowhere near the rates that you'll get here. Even in community college, you're going to be paying more, and
I would assume that their degrees are going to be the same, where there's like 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees, 8-year degrees, and all that. Like, right. I think that's relatively universal across the country or the globe at this point. So. Right. I would guess that they would probably have all of that.
Right. And one thing, and another interesting thing to point out is maybe from people who maybe be detractors to the idea of Iceland being this utopic society, which it's not, but it's damn near closer than we are. And but I could just imagine what someone might say, and that is, they're paying more. They have to pay more in taxes for these systems, right? And yeah, they do, except just they also don't have to pay Sally Mae every month for their pay back Sally Mae every month, or
Weird.
Or pay back their healthcare provider.
Or interest rates. Oh God.
Exactly.
The interest rates are the worst with most of what we have in this country with regards to healthcare and even this stuff and everything, like interest rates. Because in this country, when you have healthcare costs, you have to take it on credit typically, because most people just can't pay for it, and then you're racking up interest rates as well. So yeah, I mean, everything about our system just is such a bad idea. It's all geared towards putting people into debt and then making you have to pay interest payments for the rest of your life, basically.
Yeah.
That's everything. Car payments, buying a home, buying a house, buying a car, buying a boat, buying healthcare. I mean, everything. It's all interest rates that we're paying here, and we pay so much in interest that it's insane in this country.
Yeah. And when you list it out that way, it's a very miserable way to live.
Yeah.
And it's
you
one
never
that I think,
truly own any of these things. It always feels like, because even if you finally get to the end of your owning a car, like you finally pay off your car after like 5 to 6 years of paying it off. Now the car's not in the greatest repair anyway, and I mean, you might be able to drive that car for years to come, but you're going to have to fix it like crazy. And a lot of people will then just, say, you know what, it's too much to keep on repairing this car. I'm just going to get a new car. And then now you buy a new car and you're paying interest again. And it's just
right.
like, it's a interest trap that we find ourselves in with a lot of what we do here. And I mean, this isn't to say that in Iceland and most other countries they don't have to pay interest rates on houses and cars and stuff. It's just literally everything, even our education and our healthcare, we're paying these costs, and even going on shopping sprees, People put it on credit cards, and now you're paying credit cards, which gives you an interest rate. And
right.
Yeah.
And there's actually another statistic about how Iceland has a high level of equality in terms, and that's a big reason why, is that there isn't any barriers keeping you from getting the proper education or healthcare assistance that you need. Essentially, it puts you on the same level as just about everyone else, which is really nice. I mean, because that is truly the living in a society that gives you hope and that gives you at least a chance at success.
What gave you that idea? They're basically being the top on the list of happiest countries in the world, and highest rates of life expectancy, or any of that. I just can't see what you're talking about here, Jordan. I just don't see it.
Right, and interestingly enough, I believe Canada actually cracked the top 10 on that list. They're somewhere in the middle. Of the highest countries, which is interesting.
Those damn Canadians.
Right. And in a lot of people base their happiness a lot on their financial standing.
Yeah.
And for us personally, from personal experience, it's kind of shit. And it's very exhausting always having to pay into a system that you don't necessarily even see the results for, I'm constantly, like education, for instance. I'm paying for education that I can't even utilize because I didn't graduate because I didn't have enough money to continue my education. It's people have countless there's countless examples, similar experiences in America that are just absolutely hopeless. I mean, I don't know.
Now, there was another article that you posted from the BBC that actually delves into Iceland's happiness levels, and it's called "The Truth About Icelandic Happiness." There was one paragraph that I thought was pretty important here. It says, according to a recent United Nations report on world happiness, happiness is evenly distributed in Iceland. That is, most Icelanders are more or less equally happy, while in other nations, particularly those in the Middle East and Latin America, happiness levels vary tremendously. This is important because new research suggests that people are significantly happier living in societies where there is less inequality of happiness. In other words, we can achieve only so much happiness if our neighbors are miserable. Icelanders seem to intuitively recognize this essential truth, which that's quite interesting to me. That, like, the disparity of happiness affects the entire system. And even here in America, I've heard that even like the upper class is not happy. Nobody in our society just about is happy in this system. Because even at the top, like maybe at the very, very top, those people, they're probably the happiest people on earth because they own every damn thing in this country. But
And even then, they're probably unhappy because they wish they can own more.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say, though. Like, a lot of the wealthier kind, like, what they are unhappy with usually is, well, I don't own as many yachts as Biff down the road does. So, therefore, I'm not going to be as happy as I could be. And there's also, some of their jobs are really high stress jobs, I suppose. Having like the job of like CEO of a gigantic company can be stressful to some people, or most people that actually have a soul, because like your decisions can affect hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in those large, massive corporations. So with that does come some levels of stress, and there's just constantly moving, constantly doing this or that, constantly taking planes here or there, and it just all leads to a hecticness that leads to greater stress levels and more unhappiness.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
and that's. I think you're right. That is one of the most important, sections within that article. And I'm glad you read that, because once again, and I've read this many times before, even before this podcast, about maybe, and I know it's very philosophical, but just the meaning of life in a way. And from what I gather, a lot of it does have to do with someone's social situation. We are very social creatures, and we thrive on communication and in various forms, not just from an A and B conversation. You know what I mean? One-on-one talking vocally, but yeah, it does have to do with the interconnectedness of other people, everyone, and I think that rings true in how you're not going to be doing well unless the your neighbor next to you is also winning. And
we're not winning anymore, Jordan. We're not.
and that's a big, like, there's American exceptionalism, and then there's just exceptionalism in America, which is this idea where you're important. Self-importance is big in America, and it's not to say it's not big anywhere else, but in America particularly, it is paramount. The fact that you need to be doing well, you need to hustle for the sake of your success, and no one else's.
I feel like there's got to be some kind of connection between that selfishness and free market. Like,
Right.
there's got to be some kind of connection there. Because the more free market you have, the more selfish people get, it would seem to me. Because the more socialist some places get, the more inclusive and community-based people become, it feels like to me, with a lot of these more socialized countries. And you can at least infer it with the difference between the United States here. We have some of the least happy people on the planet, and the most unequal society, and the one of the most free of markets in general, in a lot of ways. And I mean, I don't know. It just all seems to work very nicely with each other, if you think about it.
It does, and a quote unquote free market thrives on competition. And what is competition? It's all just a game of versus, which pits one against the other.
Yeah, winners and losers.
Right.
For anyone to win lots and lots of money, other people have to lose lots and lots of money. That's how it has to work. It's an ebb and flow. There has to be. You can't have this kind of system where literally everyone wins in a capitalist, killer be killed environment. It just cannot work together.
Right. And you see that, and I think our current administration is a great example of how I'm only going to appease my base. I'm only going to appease the people who voted for me. Everyone else can fuck off.
Or my
that's
donors, really.
Oh, really? And the donors specifically. He pays lip service to his base, but his donors is the real people he signs things for.
Yeah. That being Democrats and Republicans alike, so they both do it. So don't be
absolutely.
Don't be under any ruse about that.
Right. That's true. So I think there is a noticeable difference being in a place that is considered one of the happiest countries in the world, and one where a lot of people may scoff at that because maybe America is all you know. But if you do happen to go to any of those countries, Denmark is another one of them, you will notice a difference just in just experience. You don't even have to you don't necessarily have to necessarily have a personal conversation with the natives there, or I mean with the residents.
Well, I guess they would be natives,
Yeah, natives, yeah, and in some cases, but yeah, it's just something that you can feel. Like in my experience in Iceland, I don't know what an Icelandic police officer looks like, because I didn't encounter one the whole time I was there. They could have, who knows, maybe they're just dressed like you or I don't know. But it would make sense for them to have some type of insignia to to indicate who they are. But even with that, I didn't notice not one the whole time, and I think that speaks volumes, because in America we like to be very boastful about our police force, but in actuality, I mean, really, our police force shouldn't necessarily be something to be boastful about. The fact that you're boastful about the police is also implying that we have an issue with crime and instability.
The reason you need a higher amount of cops is a higher amount of crime.
Right.
If there wasn't that much crime going on in this country, we wouldn't need almost any cops. And people would be screaming about how much we're wasting on a massive police force that does literally nothing. So, I mean, there is a economic point to be made there. And since when we were talking earlier about Iceland's crime rates compared to ours, having maybe 3 murders a year you probably don't need a massive police force. It sounds a lot like the crime rates over there really aren't nearly as high as they are here. And so, in most places, they may not even have police in some of their towns. I don't know. I've never been there. I haven't asked anyone there. Maybe we should do that. Eventually have someone on the show that actually lives in Iceland that can actually tell us how it is there in that regard. I would assume that Reykjavik, the capital city, the major hub of the country, which houses almost like 2/3 of the country's population, would probably have a sort of police force there. They would almost certainly have one there.
Yeah. That's and from what I've read, that is where the majority of. That's where you would experience the presence of the police if you were to experience that. But once again, being in the capital, we walked all over. There's not one street of Reykjavik that we did not walk down because it is so compact. You can literally get through it in one single day, and just a matter of maybe even half of the day if possible. But yeah, we scoured in Reykjavik, not necessarily looking for it, but we just didn't see it. And I do think there are some kind of some things that might be seemingly trivial that I want to bring up, but I do also believe it does contribute to this more egalitarian society. And that is how you greet people in Iceland, actually. There's no so saying Mr. and Mrs. in Iceland does not exist. You don't drop the title before the name of a person. Well, I mean,
being here in New Jersey, all we just say is fuckface, right? So,
right, exactly.
Hey, fuckface. How's it going, fuckface? All right. Hey, shit for brains. How's it going?
Right.
That's basically New Jersey's, cordial. That's our way of being cordial here in New Jersey, typically. So.
Yeah. He's like, Chris Christie is a governor. But yeah, so like.
He's more, hey, asshole, fuckface. Yeah.
Yeah, more like that. Yeah, more like that. But yeah, so for instance, if you're in a classroom, you wouldn't call your teacher Mrs. Praline, for instance. You would just say Praline, or I don't know. That's the first word that came in my head. That Praline, or if your teacher's name is John, you would just call him John. You wouldn't say Mr. John. And also for the
that's so disrespectful, though.
You would think, right? But yeah, they were actually they paid no mind to age and in rank, in social standing, and in terms of their addressing one another, which I think it's a very interesting custom to have.
Sounds like communist to me.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, once again, that may seem trivial, but I think when you are put in a position where you have to call your manager or your department leader, wherever you work at, any person in a high-ranking position, give them the qualifier, give them as Mr. or Mrs. That's already puts them a step above you in a way.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense here in America because there is a lot of authoritarianism here. Right. People, especially on the right, are very authoritarianism. The nuclear family, as it's called, the father is number one. He is the alpha in the family. The mother comes next, and then the boys, and then the girls. And then the pets. There was a pecking order even in the nuclear family of American life, and it just seeps throughout all of our culture. Even going to work, obviously you have managers and assistant managers, and then people below them, and then you have the workers, and then the janitorial staff, and then the CEOs are all the way at the top and all that. So there's a pecking order. There always is in every aspect of American life. There's always a pecking order. And even like healthcare, like we have nurses and doctors. Some doctors are higher level than other doctors, and seniority is a very important part of it. And how dare you ever speak back to a higher, more authoritative person than yourself in any field?
Can you imagine a journalist addressing the president as Trump and not Mr. President or Mr. Trump or President? You know what I mean? Like it will come as a sign of disrespect if they just address him by his last name or even his first name.
Would it be disrespectful for me to call him fuckface?
No,
with the context of being in a New Jersey dweller.
Right.
I think it's okay.
I think it'll be fine if Trump came to visit one of his numerous golf
courses, which he did recently
in New Jersey. Right.
Well, maybe not recently, like a month or two ago, I think.
Yeah.
He had a nice little vacation, and I think we talked about it a little bit on the show at the time, even because this was around the same exact time where Donald Trump was talking about fire and fury to North Korea, basically. But, So, yeah, he was here for like a week on a vacation after like 6 months of being in office. And this is the guy that bitched and moaned every single day during Obama's years for going on too many vacations, going and golfing way too much. And surprisingly, Donald Trump has already outspent Obama in his 8 years as president in his first 6 months as president. So Donald Trump has spent more money on his vacations and getaways to his Mar-a-Lago golf course in 6 months than Obama did in the entire 8 years he was president. Just think about that, guys. That's unbelievable. And why people aren't calling him out on that every single day is beyond me. Unless they're just being drowned out by all of the insanity that has been going on for this entire presidency.
Right. I mean, there's really, if you're just an ordinary citizen in America, it's really not really, I mean, it could just be an excuse, but it's not all the time. You don't really have all the time to really think about that kind of stuff, Like we brought up before, you're always so concerned about you're concerned about paying your bills, and a lot of people they barely make
yourself and your kids,
right. They barely make ends meet because you're paying a loan agency or your healthcare provider. It's just
and I mean, this is where things start getting really, really difficult because people are paying so much attention to just surviving life, trying to feed themselves, trying to feed their kids, trying to keep a house over their heads, trying to keep the electricity on, trying to keep the heat on, trying to do all of these things while working at least a full-time job, 40 plus hours, and there's just not enough time for most people to pay attention to these things. And when people aren't paying attention to what's happening in their country, that's when these nefarious assholes can take power and do everything that they want to fuck us over even more. And how can we blame people for being pissed off and angry when things are worse and worse for people? This is why I can understand people being angry at even Obama for a lot of his term, because largely most people got nothing. A lot of people lost their jobs after the recession, and then they didn't get that gainful employment back. Or if they did get employment again, it was lower paying than they used to have. And so now their standard of living has to adjust to that and lowers. And that makes people upset. That makes people angry. That makes people, more prone to being jealous of others for getting handouts, let's say, or whatever else you want to call it, and it just breeds a toxic environment that even Obama and the Democrats fed into. And now Donald Trump is also feeding into it as well, and more directly than they ever did, I guess, at least.
Exactly. And that acutely affects the low-wage worker in the blue collar.
Yeah.
And once again, those kind of employment opportunities are slim picking. Unfortunately, it's like I said, we live in a time where people are more or less forced into a career because they don't necessarily they don't have the opportunity of choice, to actually do something they would actually enjoy doing, and for the most part, that would take some form of education in order to find that your niche, and like America is the home of the privatized. Everything is privatized. You can't, like.
I guess that wouldn't really work as well in the national anthem. And the land of the free and the home of the privatized. I don't think it would work as well.
Nah, or maybe if you went screamo on the privatized.
Privatized! I don't know. But anyway.
Right. So yeah, just to take things back in Iceland, I mean, like, those are the things that really mattered in my trip there. Sure, of course, the natural scenery, the wondrous surroundings is amazing. I mean, it's something you can't get anywhere else. I mean, it's, and apparently, they do have. While I was there, I didn't necessarily notice it, but inquiring more into it, I found out that they do have some issues with deforestation and just how industrialization, how it's changing the landscape out there, and apparently it's pretty bad. I mean, if you go out to Iceland, you'll be hard pressed to find any forest. Really, but apparently when the settlers did come to Iceland, it was majority covered in forest, except of course in order for grazing purposes, they had to change that, and of course they contaminated the soil too, because of the deforestation, and so now Iceland you don't find that anymore. Of course, a lot of the trees you will find, they look manufactured. They look like they were planted there specifically in orderly row because of that. So yeah, I mean, so they're definitely struggling with industry, and of course, it all goes back to, like I said, the economics and industry. It's just they are a big driving force for destabilization, and they also can be a driving force for great employment and opportunities and low unemployment. So it's like a catch-22 where maybe we'll get to a point where, and I'm sure we will, if the world doesn't kill us first, in terms of energy consumption in our sources of energy, which is actually a great other thing I do want to bring up. So, in terms of the electricity in Iceland, it is 100% renewable. Not to say that they don't use oil and petroleum in Iceland, because they do. They use it a lot for industrial vehicles and in fishing fleets, which is one of the biggest industries out in all of Iceland alone. And
I heard with regards to the power, it was about 85% renewable, so mostly renewable.
No. And let me clear that up for you. It's only 85% because of the petroleum that's used in vehicles. It's not necessarily talking about the energies that's powering Iceland. It's also
possibly in manufacturing then maybe too, like the aluminum that you were talking about earlier.
Right. So it's factoring in all of that. Iceland, in all intents and purposes, is 100% renewable, and the aluminum factories are fueled by hydraulic activity and also and other natural sources as well. Except, of course, it's emitting really, really terrible gases into the atmosphere. And, of course, like I said, those fisheries and those fleets and those in these industrial vehicles, they rely on petroleum to run because, sure, your car might be all electric, but there's still not necessarily a marketable I guess, battery strong enough for vehicles of that mass and that size. I mean, and of that weight. So yeah, that's still a problem, you know. Yeah. And of course, their carbon footprint is very small. But yet, we are trying to get to a point where it can be non-existent, other than what we emit from our own bodies, essentially. So yeah. Now,
I just wanted to wrap things up here with one last part of that one article from the grapevine.is. I think this is a very interesting and important point. I was going to talk about this earlier, but we got sidetracked, but it's okay. It's in regard to the healthcare system and the current push right now. She goes on here, it says, "This is being written for a reason," meaning this article. "Recently, I have felt the tone of Icelanders' conversation about their healthcare system changing. The nation's nurses and doctors have been striking, and there is significant brain drain from both professions to countries like Norway, where they are paid significantly better and work far less grueling hours. We regularly hear horror stories about the inadequacy of facilities at the National Hospital. The healthcare system is constantly described as broken. Some suspect that the system is being starved on purpose to ease an intended transition to the private sector. Unfortunately, that doesn't sound too far-fetched, as Noam Chomsky posited in 2011 in a 2011 lecture at the University of Toronto, quote, "The state corporate complex, a threat to freedom and survival." That's the name of the lecture itself. The state corporate complex, a threat to freedom and survival. He says, quote, "That's the standard technique of privatization. Defund, make sure things don't work, people get angry, you hand it over to private capital." Interesting how that's exactly what happens here in our country. They defund our public schools, and what do you know? The Republican Party today is saying, you see that? The education system doesn't work. That's why we need to have more charter schools. Thus privatizing the education system. So this is not an uncommon theme. It's not happening just here in America. It is creeping into other countries, and they're trying to do it with their national hospital or their national healthcare system. And this is that party that we were talking about earlier that deregulated the financial industry. The Independence Party is that party. And they are the hyper-corporatist type party that are trying to privatize these sectors in Iceland. So it was just a little thing that I wanted to leave off with since we didn't get to it earlier. But yeah, these things are happening, guys. We have to make sure that they don't happen. The only way we can make sure they don't happen is being aware that they're trying to make these happen and to fight back. Get active, become activist if you can. If you can't, then donate money to maybe an activist group that is fighting against these people. Try and help us out, guys, because we need to make these changes. Otherwise, our system is going to get less and less fair, and it's going to get worse and worse for us. We're going to get lower outcomes or worse outcomes, and the rich are just going to benefit madly from it. So, with that, guys, unless you have anything to add, Jordan, before we get out of here?
Yeah, just in wrapping things up. Yep, it's a worldwide effort, and just making sure that that everyone, privatization doesn't run the doesn't run the hen house. You know what I mean?
You mean the wolf running the hen house?
There we go. That's
right.
That's it. Yeah. Well, I didn't necessarily say the wolf because privatization is the wolf.
That's anyway. The wolf running the hen house. The privatization is running the hen house right now. So
yeah, exactly. So yeah, definitely. Everyone get involved, no matter where you are, because it is a threat to all of the world, not just America.
Yeah. But with that, guys, thank you very much. I'm not going to make the whole spiel of our Facebook and all that today, just for brevity's sake. We're a little over time as it is, I think. So thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. I hope we get you next week. What's our next week topic? I think we're actually going to be doing Brexit if Michael's going to be joining us next week. We're going to be doing what's going on with Brexit these days? What's going on there? So
what's going on?
How's it going? We'll see what's going on. So yeah, thank you guys. Have a great one.